Shalom, I'm Jerry, and today I'll be reading from Exodus 22 through 24. If a thief found breaking and is struck so that he dies, there is no blood guilt for him. But if the sun has risen, there is blood guilt, and he is to make full restitution. If he has nothing, then he must be sold for his theft. If the item is found in his hand alive, whether ox, donkey, or sheep, he is to pay double. If a man causes a field or vineyard to be eaten by letting his animal loose, and it feeds in another man's field, then he is to make restitution from the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard. If fire breaks out and spreads among thorns, so that stalks of grain, standing grain, or the fields themselves are consumed, then the one who lit the fire must make full restitution. If a man entrusts his neighbor with money or items for safekeeping, and it is stolen out of the man's house, when the thief is found, he must pay double. If the thief is not found, then the master of the house is to present himself to God to see whether he has laid his hand on his neighbor's goods. For any transgression, whether ox, donkey, sheep, clothing, or anything else lost, when someone says, "This is mine," the case of both parties is to be brought before God. The one whom God convicts is to pay double to his neighbor. If a man entrusts his neighbor with a donkey, ox, sheep, or any animal to care for, and it dies, is hurt, or taken away with no one seeing, then there must be an oath before Adonai between the two of them to determine whether or not he has laid his hand on his neighbor's goods. The owner is to accept it with no restitution. But if indeed it was stolen from him, he is to make restitution to the owner. If it is torn in pieces, let him bring it as evidence. He is not required to pay for what has been torn to pieces. If a man borrows anything belonging to his neighbor and it is harmed or dies in the absence of the owner, he must make full restitution. But if the owner is present, he is not required to pay restitution. If it was rented, it is covered by the rental fee. If a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged and lies with her, he must pay a dowry for her to be his wife. But if her father utterly refuses to give her to him, he must weigh out silver equal to the dowry for virgins. You must not permit a sorceress to live. Anyone who lies with an animal must surely be put to death. Anyone who sacrifices to the gods except to Adonai alone is to be put under a ban of destruction. You must not exploit or oppress an outsider, for you were outsiders in the land of Egypt. You must not mistreat any widow or orphan. If you mistreat them in any way, and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry. My wrath will burn hot, and I will kill you with the sword. So your wives will become widows, and your children will become orphans. If you lend money to any of my people, to the poor among you, you are not to act like a debt collector with him, and you are not to charge him interest. If you ever take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, you are to return it to him before the sun goes down, for this is his only covering, his cloak for his skin. What will he sleep in? When he cries out to me, I will hear, because I am gracious. Do not despise God or curse a ruler of your people. Do not hold back the fullness of your crops or your vintage. You are to present the firstborn of your sons to me. Do the same with your cattle and with your sheep. For 7 days it is to be with its mother, and on the 8th day you are to give it to me. You are to be a holy people for me. You must not eat any flesh torn by beasts in the field. You may throw it out to the dogs. Do not spread a false report. Do not join hands with the wicked by becoming a malicious witness. Do not follow a crowd to do evil, nor are you to testify in a case, to follow a crowd and pervert justice. On the other hand, nor should you take sides with a poor man in his case. If you find your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you must surely bring it back to him again. If you see the donkey of the one that hates you lying down under its burden, do not leave it. Rather, you are to release it with him. You are not to pervert justice to your poor in his dispute. Stay far away from a false charge. Do not kill the innocent and the righteous, for I will not justify the guilty. Take no bribe, for a bribe blinds those who have sight and perverts the words of the righteous. Do not oppress an outsider, for you know the heart of an outsider, since you were outsiders in the land of Egypt. For 6 years you are to sow your land and gather the increase. But during the 7th year you are to let it rest and lie fallow, so that the poor among your people may eat. Whatever they leave behind, the animals of the field may eat. You are to deal with your vineyard and your olive grove in the same way. You are to do your work for 6 days, but on the 7th day you will rest, so that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and also the son of your handmaid and the outsider may be refreshed. With all the things that I have said to you, take heed. Make no mention of the names of other gods, and do not let them be heard in your mouth. 3 times in the year you are to celebrate a festival for me. You are to observe the feast of Matsuot. For 7 days you will eat Matsuot as I commanded you, at the time appointed in the month, Aviv, for that is when you came out from Egypt. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Also you are to observe the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors that you sow in the field, as well as the feast of the ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather your crops from the field. 3 times in the year all your men are to appear before Adonai Elohim. Do not offer the blood of my sacrifice with chametz, nor is the fat of my feast to remain out all night until the morning. Bring the choicest first fruits of your land into the house of Adonai your God. Do not boil a kid in its mother's milk. Behold, I am sending an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Watch for him and listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, because he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you listen closely to his voice and do everything I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you to the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. You are not to bow down to their gods or serve them or do what they do. Rather, you are to utterly overthrow them and break their pillars in pieces. You are to serve Adonai your God, and he will bless your food and your water. Moreover, I will take sickness away from your midst. None will miscarry nor be barren in your land, and I will fill up the number of your days. I will send my terror before you and throw all the people to whom you will come into panic, and make all your enemies turn their backs to you. I will send the hornet before you, which will drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in a single year, otherwise the land will become desolate, and the animals of the field will multiply against you. But little by little I will drive them out from before you, until you are fruitful, then you will possess the land. I will set your border from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates River, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you are to drive them out before you. Make no covenant with them or with their gods. They must not dwell in your land and cause you to sin against me, for if you worship their gods, they will be a snare to you. Then to Moses he said, Come up to Adonai, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel, and worship from afar. Moses alone is to approach Adonai, but the others may not draw near, nor the people to go up with him. So Moses came and told the people all the words of Adonai, as well as all the ordinances. All the people answered with one voice and said, All the words which Adonai has spoken, we will do. So Moses wrote down all the words of Adonai, then rose up early in the morning and built an altar below the mountain, along with 12 pillars for the 12 tribes of Israel. He then sent out young men of Bnei Israel, who sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings of oxen to Adonai. Then Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and the other half he poured out against the altar. He took the scroll of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. Again they said, All that Adonai has spoken, we will do and obey. Then Moses took the blood, sprinkled it on the people, and said, Behold the blood of the covenant which Adonai has cut with you in agreement with all these words. Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up. They saw the God of Israel, and under his feet was something like a pavement of sapphire, as clear as the very heavens. Yet he did not raise his hand against the nobles of Bnei Israel. So they beheld God and ate and drank. Then Adonai said to Moses, Come up to me on the mountain and stay there, and I will give you the tablets of stone with the Torah and the mitzvot which I have written, so that you may instruct them. So Moses rose up along with his attendant Joshua, and Moses went up onto the mountain of God. To the elders he said, "Wait for us here until we come back to you. See, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a dispute should go to them." When Moses went up on the mountain, the cloud covered it. The glory of Adonai settled upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. Then on the 7th day he called to Moses out of the midst of the cloud. The appearance of the glory of Adonai was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of Bnei Israel. So Moses entered into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.